Appeals Court temporarily delays Mississippi officials from creating a state-run court in part of the majority Black capital city of Jackson, which was supposed to start on Monday. The ruling came just before U.S. District Judge Henry Wingate dismissed requests to block the Capitol Complex Improvement District Court in a ruling filed late Sunday. The U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals granted a temporary administrative stay, blocking the court's creation until at least January 5th. The Capitol Complex Improvement District Court will have the same power as municipal courts, which handles misdemeanor cases, traffic violations, and initial appearances for some criminal charges. People convicted in most municipal court face time in a local jail. Those convicted in the new court will be held in a state prison near people convicted of more serious felony crimes. Dr. Ali, I wanted to start with you because here's a situation where the people do not have the power in terms of selecting those people in charge in the court system. When you know how important it is to have the right people in power, whether it's the DA, the prosecutor, to make things work for you, especially if you are a person of color.
Mississippi and other cities, you'll find that people's vote is equated with being able to have the individuals that you want, whether they're your judges or a number of the other positions that are a part of the judicial process. So then you have to ask the question, well, why not in Jackson? Why is it that in Jackson you feel that you have the right to then put a different system in place to be able to choose? You'll have someone there from the state government, from the governor's folks, who will be choosing the individuals who will sit, like you said, there on the courts. And what's the difference between there and some of the other locations? Well, of course, it's because Jackson has one of the largest Black populations that are there. So we have to understand the game that is being played in Mississippi, but you also have to understand that this is a game that has been going on in Mississippi for, a couple hundred years. And that's why when you have a state that has the highest level of Black folks who are able to vote, why they have all the restrictions that they have in place. So this is just another one of those restrictions that is tied to a long set of systemic sets of actions and racism that's been going on in Mississippi for quite a while.
Nicole, make this make sense to me and the viewers as to why this would take place. It's halted for now because a lot of eyes are on it. But how does this make sense, especially for someplace like Jackson?
I mean, it is part of a long game around the status quo trying to overtake Black-led communities. I mean, not only does Jackson have one of the largest Black communities, one of the largest Black populations, but there's been intentional work since the 70s of Black folks moving to Jackson, working to assume political power in the locality, as part of a utopia, if you will, around Black governance, around Black leadership. So in the heart of Mississippi. So Mississippi white elites taking over Jackson is part of their effort to counter that, to recounter the Black power movement in Jackson, amongst the Black residents of the state. And it's not just present in Mississippi, but what they try in Mississippi might come to another state, might come to my home state of Texas, might come to other states throughout the South, if not other localities and jurisdictions around the country. I mean, there's also experiences around this in states like Michigan. If you look at Flint, if you look at the interest of state lawmakers to overtake localities, particularly Black-run localities in the Midwest. So it's not just about Mississippi. These examples, these incidents might be trial runs, might be examples of white governance trying to overtake Black-led communities around the country.
And I will agree with you on one point, all your points, but mainly the point that, Texas would be in line for something like this. Dr. Walker, what do you think is the setup that we're looking at here? Because this seems to be like a setup for something else, precedent for other states, maybe like Nicole said, but in your estimation, how are you seeing it?
Yeah, you see states like Florida's ground zero for a lot of these changes you see in other jurisdictions, Texas, et cetera. And so what Mississippi has done is created a template that will be adopted, whether it's Texas or, other large or, mid-sized states throughout the United States. But I want us to pull back a little bit about what's really going on here and we can go back actually a few decades. This is an attack on Black political power. More importantly, in my opinion, this is a direct result of the Great Society programs of the 1960s, particularly the Voting Rights Act. And once again, this is connected to diminishing Black political power in one of the blackest states in the country. And particularly like Jackson, which is a predominantly Black city. This is attack. Governor Reeves, we just talked about him a few minutes ago, instead of addressing issues relating to clean water, or once again, as I mentioned earlier, the Black infant mortality rate, or the rate in which Black women die from pregnancy, or addresses issues relating to supporting the education system, this is what they come up with. And once again, if you pull it back, this is another way to attack Black political power in the United States.
Dr. Ali, this is something that certainly people are going to be fighting for. How do you suggest people fight something like this? Because it might be coming to a city near them. This really is just the beginning. It's just been halted for now, but this is something that states are working on.
Well, the thing that we can always do is to make sure that we are supporting the organizations that are on the ground, both locally and those nationally, that are pushing back against these types of things, those who are strategizing. This is incredibly important also when you look at what's going on right there in Jackson, and understanding the dynamics in Mississippi with the felony disenfranchisement set of actions that they've had. This is also tied to limiting the amount of folks who can vote. So we need to make sure that there is a fair judicial system. And we do that by, one, supporting the groups that are on the ground, two, making sure that we are actually going out and voting, understanding the difficulties that exist in that space so that we have the right folks who are in place, not just on the local and the county level, but also on the state and the federal level. And then also making sure that we continue to talk about it, highlight it, and write about it. I wish more folks would pick up their cell phone and make a video when they see these sorts of injustices and share how you feel. I never tell anybody how they should feel, but share with folks what you're thinking about this. So we have so much more power than sometimes we actually utilize.
And Nicole, this certainly doesn't translate very well for someone who has committed some type of a misdemeanor, and then they're alongside people who have felony charges. How will this change if this does go through and other states do follow in this particular, in these footsteps? How will this change the system in terms of how you're regarded and how crimes are regarded?
Well, I mean, it expands the court system to have authority over people's real lives. And if they choose to disappear people for even minor offenses to state prison, then it expands the prison system in the state of Mississippi, which is already under scrutiny because of its constitutional violations of the Eighth Amendment. I mean, Mississippi's prison system is one of the most outrageous in the country, has one of the highest incarceration rates, not just in the United States, but in the world. And yet here, if this court is allowed to be established, it would expand the ability to send and disappear people to prison for even minor offenses. So that is definitely a step in the wrong direction. It is an attack on Black political power and Black agency, Black thriving, not just in Jackson, but in Mississippi. And it also suggests it could be a template for other southern states, but also across the country. So there is no need to expand the level of courts to disappear people to prison, given the highest rate of incarceration that the United States currently has. In fact, we need to be moving in the opposite direction to help readjust, recalibrate what can send people to prison many times for too long sentences, and really take prison off the table for a range of experiences that people get sent to prison and jail for in the United States that they just don't simply get sent to prison and jail for in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and Dr. Walker, I think one thing that's interesting here is that you have people who they said they would be serving alongside those who committed more serious felonies, even though their crimes might have been a misdemeanor. Seems like a setup for those people who might be in a situation. I'm not sure how it will play out, but it could play out where your record looks a little differently when you go out into the world if you go through this particular system and how your record is reflected in the world.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think the other issue to keep in mind is considering some of the challenges and conditions not only in Mississippi but other states, is how some of these individuals for these minor offenses who brought in contact with individuals with more serious offenses could be victimized that's not discussed enough in terms of, the criminal justice system and in terms of how individuals are victimized, and then they come out and they victimize other individuals because they've been traumatized. But I think that your point about, the stigma associated with, this new system, I think the other thing I want to add is about the idea of, obviously this was signed into law and then, it's going through the courts, is that we have to keep in mind that I thought it's all about, states' rights. I mean, not just states' rights, but individual control at the local level. So if it's about control at the local level, then you wouldn't need this new court system. But this proves that it's not about that, right? This is about, once again, diminishing Black political power and also putting Black folks in positions where they're more likely to be victimized and come out and maybe reoffend and, impact other individuals in their community and continue a cycle. So once again, it's not needed. But once again, it's not really about local control, as we always hear about. This is about maintaining a system where Black folks continue to be oppressed.
And Dr. Ali, I'm going to close with you. What does it mean? How does it translate when someone does not have that local control and it goes into the state? What does that do to a community, and what can its reverberating effects be on the people who live there?
Oh, as soon as you start losing power, it often grows and metastasizes. It strips hope away from folks who live there, that they no longer have autonomy over the decision making that's going on. It tells somebody, does my vote really matter if someone can just come in and do these types of things? You also see resources moving to those who have power and supporting the things that they say are important. So we've seen it, as was raised earlier. You saw it in Flint, Michigan. You saw it in Washington, D.C. when Congress took over the city at one time. There are a number of locations across our country where we've seen that when you start to take away Black power, that it also follows that resources are going to begin to wane also, even when there's very few in many instances already there.
A new year for a new you. Curl Prep Natural Hair Solutions at curlprep.com is an amazing organic line for curls, locks, braids, twists, and even those wigs and extensions. Women, men, and children are loving this line. Look at this video and you be the judge. People line up to see this product in action at hair shows, and when they take a seat and try it, they don't believe it's their hair. Buy the products at curlprep.com. It works on all hair types. Use code ROLAND, that's ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. Parents, remove the ouch. You will love this system because you can comb the product through your child's hair with your fingers. Seasoned saints are loving the product. It's all at curlprep.com. Use code ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. You won't believe it's your hair.